My name is Brayden Moore, and this is my showcasing of my payroll allocation automation. This is for a journal entry. A little bit of background before we get started on this is that this journal entry usually took the user 3 to 4 hours at minimum to finish. Some days it could be a full entire venture where it take the whole entire day to actually complete this journal entry. The purpose behind that was because when done manually, the user has to go through a large data sheet that's pulled from our accounting software and find individual names throughout this large data sheet. This data sheet is upwards of 30,000 lines. Now, if you had multiple employees that you're looking for, then you'd have to do that multiple times, which you often run into. How this system is set up is that you'll be able to place however many employees you want to in this leftmost column as far as you can go down. And then from there, you'll be able to insert the data and it'll find those names that you put in there. It's by a last name, first name basis. I also do want to keep in mind, I want to view the code. We have also implemented Levenstein distance, which is a theory, but however, if you type in one typo or two typos, I have it set at 2, it'll still find the name that you're looking for. The purpose behind that was that some names in our system has last name, first name, and then there's also a middle initial tied at the very end, which is 2 characters. Say, for example, the middle initial is L, it'd be L period. So I tossed in Levenstein distance to create a little bit of a string acceptance, and it has helped greatly. But nonetheless, as we go into the project, we can look here. The desired employee sheet kind of acts as our central hub. That's the way to always vision it. You have steps that will lead you through the project. For example, our first step, which we already mentioned, was to please insert desired employees. The second step is just going to be putting in the payroll month end date. The third step is going to be importing the data. Fourth step, which we'll get into, is creating the allocations with that data. And then the fifth step is finally creating our journal entry. Before we begin, I do want to go into the data and discuss a few things before we do insert it. And we should be opening shortly once we get it downloaded. Perfect. And I want to go over a few factors that go into this data. So the first thing that you notice, just for confidentiality reasons, because I am using company information, I've blocked out all the employee names. It's just with a white font, but they are blocked out, as well as all the information in the middle too. This information in the middle doesn't actually play into the project at all. It's just more the rows that come along with the data. If we notice on the credit and debit columns, I am going to change this to debit. Now I do see that because I just copied the column over. On the debit and credit columns, I have just put in random integers as well. These are random values. This is not actual real information. So that's just something to keep in mind. With this VBA, one thing that we did run into as an issue was in column A. I'm not going to press on it so it doesn't appear up here because it does have GL account numbers. But in column A, this is a whole entire merged cell right here. So this is an example of the merged cell over here with a made up number. And you can see here that has a whole entire merged cell with it. So if the code was going to be pulling column 4, for example, and say my name was right there, it'd pull this column, but you'll notice that there's nothing in column A for row 4, because that value is actually technically in row 3. So one of the issues that we actually had to unmerge this whole entire block here, and then it takes that topmost value and it fills it into the values below. And then same thing, topmost value, unmerge, and then fill in all these below. And the cycle repeats, so on and so forth. So a good example of how this would work was if we would undo the merge and centering, and it does that right there. So as we actually get into the data, we'll show an example of how it works. So for this example, I'm just going to use my name, And of course it is just play data, so this is none of my information. But we'll go ahead and put more. Braden, and I do know that I do have an initial with mine, so I'll just go ahead and put my middle initial. I am playing with March's data of this year, so I will go ahead and put in 03/31/2024. And then now I will insert my exported data. And for this example, I will go ahead and close this out. Don't save that. So we can just kind of see what it looks like when you're actually pulling it from the files. So we're on step 3. We'll go ahead and press this button. And we're going to go find our data. And of course, this is the file that we are looking for. One thing to note that button actually just prompts you to open up data, and it tells you on the top left, select Excel files, and it's already prompted just for Excel files, because that's what we export from our accounting database is an Excel file with all the month's payroll entries. So we'll go ahead and insert it. We'll press OK. Now this step does take a quick minute just because there's 30,000 lines to sort through, and it's just looking for my name. You'll be able to see there what it's kind of doing though. So I am going to make a cut in the video real quick, just because I am working with a VPN as well. So working with a VPN, it can be a little bit lengthy. But when we come back, I'll start up the video again and we'll continue. Alright, so now that the data has loaded, this is what we see. We'll be able to see here, please place number of payroll days on cell O2. So, okay, perfect. And the purpose behind that is if, for example, there is days in a payroll period that ends in the current month that take place in the prior month, you want to also include those days as well. So an example is if there was a payroll that started on February 21st and then it ends in March. So you want those 7 days that separate to also be included. And you just place that up here. And that adjusts our numbers over here as well. This is a complex formula in itself, and we won't go into explanation for it just because that's not what the sake of the video is for, but it does calculate on the right. We can also know that after that code has finished running, we have a new sheet, and it's actually named at the end of the month, the last entry. And we can also see it only pulled out my name in that data. That data set was about 30,000 lines long. We ended up with 21 lines, and it's just my entries, which is great. So when we completed that step, we'll come back to our hub, the desired employee sheet, and we will now go to step number 4, which will create allocations. Perfect. So we get one more prompt. Please edit cells column AB, cells on column AB as needed. And all it's saying is we have GL account numbers here on the left, and if there was common GL account numbers here, it just reduced those down and sum those lines. So that's why we have less lines now, because it just sums the whole entire line if column A matches another row in column A. So if we do come over here, what it's speaking about are these units over here. You can differentiate how you want these to be separated. These are 3 accounts here. And if you want 40% of the allocation to go towards that account, then the other 40% go to the 7002 series, you can. The remaining 20% going to the 7003 series. We can adjust these. There's no purpose for the presentation, but that is possible, and it will give you new allocation data for the journal entry that's coming up. So once we have that step complete, we'll finally go back to our hub, and we're on our last step. This is going to be creating the journal entry. So we'll go ahead and press on this button. We see that the data duplication modification is complete. Perfect. Then some formula is added to the PR sheets. Awesome. And it tells us that we are complete. So if we look over here, we can also see that all this data has gone through several accounts. And for that sake, we can see that we have these here and then switches over, and each line showcases it going to a new account. And that is our automated journal entry for payroll allocation. Just to reinstate, this was a 3 or 4 hour process on a good day. and it could take a full entire day. We have gotten this down, usually if you're not on a VPN, down to about 5 minutes, which is great. But on that note, I will go ahead and end the video.